I'm Luke Brogdon for Kingsport.tv, and we're here with Luke P.I.T.S and Chris Bryant of local grunge disciples, the P.I.T.S. The guys are preparing to release their first full-length album, Story Road, and it's a follow-up to their EP, She's Dead Now. And I think we talked about that on the Buzz with you guys 6 or 7 months ago.
Yep.
Cool. Well, what can we tell folks they should expect from the album?
Well, they should definitely expect a lot of jumping around. We never really did adhere to one particular style. We always wanted the freedom to just kind of do what we wanted, and we want people to be able to expect a lot when they listen to our album, I guess. Just a variety.
How do you feel that might differ from She's Dead Now? I mean, it had a kind of a cohesive sound in a lot of ways. What brought along some of the experimentation that you did?
Well, this kind of sounds strange, but I like music more than I actually like playing music. So when I would sit down to write a song, every now and then my ability is not quite where I would like it to be in order to play a particular song. So I experiment with a lot of different styles because it's more fitting of my ability as a guitarist, and it affects my writing ability.
I think I told you all this before, but I'd kind of described the sound on She's Dead Now of like a kind of a midnight locomotive coming by on a snowy night, because it has that darkness, you know, and that kind of melancholy, but it also has that hard driving sound and that loudness. If you had to paint a picture for folks of what Story Road sounds like, what would that be?
Well, I think it's probably predicated on what you said. That sound comes from a lot of days of Chris and I lying around on beds talking about how the world was against us,
yeah,
and how we felt like we were alone. And there's almost some comfort in that, which sounds really strange, but there's almost some comfort when you don't expect anybody to come to your aid, which I'm not saying I don't expect. That's kind of a teenage, kind of from our teenage era. And it's almost like that going on in a dark bedroom, and we brought in some clowns to make things a little more interesting outside the room.
Okay, all right. So you have plans to release this album a little bit differently than you released the EP. Of course, you had a traditional pressing and, you know, plastic jewel cases, everything, CDs for She's Dead Now. What are you doing with Story Road?
Chris, you want to talk about that?
I will. Our main method of distribution is just going to be internet. You know, it's not that expensive, and it's a whole lot cheaper than buying paper and jewel cases and ink, and I found out it was a large pain to go through that, and we only made 50 copies of She's Dead Now. So we're going to do the internet thing, and I think what we're going to do for people who want physical copies is take pre-orders, and as soon as we build up enough cash to get a run on Story Road, then we'll go ahead and do that and sell those copies.
Are there any artistic influences or reasons for doing this other than the practical and equipment based?
Well, yeah, it always helps when someone in the mainstream undertakes something like that. And, you know, we were influenced by Radiohead's and Rainbows. We saw them like sometime in May, and I thought a lot about how innovative it was to allow people even to do their own CD art. We don't really have the ability to do anything like that, but just the freedom and the trust between the artist and the musician, the artist and the fans of the musician, that they can just pay whatever they want to and receive what they're interested in.
Let's do Are You King? Okay. You guys have been a band for a long time. I think that your first show was in your middle school gym for a talent show, and you flirted with, you know, third and fourth players, some bass players, some lead guitarists over time, but you keep coming back to the two-person model. What is it that you have against bass players?
they're not punctual. That's what it is.
Punctuality.
Yeah. No, it's nobody's exhibited the dedication to our goals. I mean, just no one has seemed as interested as Chris and I do, and I mean, it really shows in practicing. I say punctuality kind of as in jest, but there's some actuality to that because people won't show up and they're not dedicated. Also, we've had members that have tried to shift our goal, and we're not going to compromise. So,
In the past, listening to your lyrics, they can be vague and opaque and mostly personal or abstract, but never political. What's the reason for keeping politics out of your songs in a time when things are pretty political?
Well, I feel like politics are something very mundane and something that someone has to deal with on a daily basis, and I don't feel like it really belongs in my music. I like to think of my music as a way to kind of escape just the regular monotony of the day, and I kind of hold more to like the romantic poets like Edgar Allan Poe, and using phantasmagoria, like you talked about, like the vagueness in my lyrics. I think that lyrics in and of themselves don't necessarily have to have a concrete meaning as long as they sound pretty and it's pleasing to listen to. And I want my music to be pleasing to listen to rather than to make a political statement.
Chris, when we talked earlier about this, you made a comment that the best way to deface art is to mix politics in it. Do you think that the politics affect the aesthetic quality of the art?
Yeah, I mean, it depends. I mean, you know, last time we talked about it, I mentioned Rage Against the Machine, and they're one of my favorite bands, and they're 100% political. But I think it's the pretense that ruins it. A lot of bands, when they get into politics, like, you know, we talked about last time, Green Day, it just seems like pretense, and that's what ruins the aesthetic quality of the music. And Rage Against the Machine, they managed to pull it off because they're totally sincere in what they're talking about. So the music, it remains interesting.
Yeah, you know Zach De La Rocha's sincere, man. You can hear it in his voice. Yeah.
Pulsing through his veins.
Yeah.
He's totally a communist, and I mean,
Yeah.
that's what he wants. And
All right, well, as we are here for Kingsport.tv, I guess we shouldn't end this interview without talking a little bit about the local scene. A lot of more venues are bringing in live music these days, but the independent scene still seems to be having a hard time. And the last time we talked, we got into a conversation of, is this a chicken or an egg kind of thing? And this question is to you, Chris. Do you think that the scene has trouble because there aren't venues or media outlets covering it enough, or the fact that there aren't media outlets covering it because there's not much of a scene?
It's hard to say. I mean, there aren't a lot of venues that cater to pure rock, and there aren't a lot of venues that cater strictly to music. Most of them are, you know, hangouts. You could go there and have a good time without a band being there. So, I mean, that's part of the problem. And I guess another part of the problem is that, in general, most of the people around in this area aren't interested that much in music. They are interested in going to a place and having a drink and hanging out with their friends, but experimental music or something they haven't heard, it's not that big, I guess.
About a fortune, my take